Okay, guys, can you hear me? Okay. We let you start the session. Okay, here you go.
Thank you, Peter. Well, don't worry, Peter. We had a great time watching you during that technical break. You and Daniel looked great, and you were taking selfies and so on. We saw all that, by the way. So, but people really enjoyed it because they had to wait like 15 minutes. So I think it's great that the people have stayed here. We have a full room today. You don't see the room, but we have a full room, and it's a shame you guys couldn't make it and let me down, but I'm sure we're going to have a great session together. So I'm Karim Habra. I'm head of Ivanhoe Cambridge for Europe and Asia Pacific. Ivanhoe Cambridge is a subsidiary of the Caisse des Dépôts du Québec, which is the pension fund for Quebec pensioners. We invest in real estate globally. Our headquarters are in Montreal, but we invest actually in Canada, in North America, in Europe, in Asia Pacific, and even in Latin America. We've been investing in real estate for over 30 years now in all kind of sectors: shopping centers, office, logistics, residential. We invest in a direct or indirect way. We usually are an operator or a direct investor, but we also can invest indirectly through funds, through platforms, and through different vehicles. And I'm looking forward to touch base today on how that crisis has actually impacted our strategy. Daniel?
We manage a global portfolio focused predominantly on North America
the bottom to hit. Actually, we don't have really a clear view on this, to be honest. Yeah, it's I have to say, you know, we have probably less certain. There's more uncertainty today than there were that we thought we had in April or in March or April. And that's an issue because, of course, we don't know how long we're going to be in this crisis. Remember, back 6 months ago, lots of people were talking about V-shapes, sometimes U-shapes. I don't think anybody's talking about V-shape anymore. I'm not even sure people are talking about U-shapes. So that's an issue for us. You know, what we really focused on at that time was making sure our portfolio is okay. Yeah, and we had actually our portfolio is okay, our tenants and users are okay, and our partners are okay. And this was the priority at that time. Our portfolio, making sure we have got lots of developments and construction sites. That was a big challenge in March, April. Just making sure that some of the sites carry on. You know, we have, for example, in Paris, we're constructing the duo towers. You know, 2 towers, which are roughly 120 and 180 meters high. Just to give you an idea, during the lockdown, normally we run at full capacity with 600 workers per day, and during the lockdown that went down to 100 workers, and gradually went up. So, one of the challenges we had was really making sure that these construction sites carry on. The pace was slower, but it continued, and that was important. We also spent lots of time with our tenants, our users, not necessarily collecting rents as much as we can. At the end of the day, the goal here was to make sure that these tenants are surviving, will survive this crisis, because what we want, we have a long-term view, obviously, and what we want is to make sure that once this is over, our tenants are still here, and not necessarily thinking short-term and collecting cash in the next 2 or 3 months. So that was actually a big effort on our side to really be close to them. And of course, our partners, and we have all type of partners, as I said that in my introduction. We have partners in which we invest through funds, so GPs. We have operating partners. We have JV partners. And for this kind, we're really making sure that our partners and us are aligned. One of the things you often see in these kind of crises is really about disalignment of interest. I mean, we've all been here in 2009. One of the issues about investing with partners at that time was we realized that some of the agreements we have with partners were not built to cope with a crisis of this kind. And of course, the first thing that happened, when this has hit us in March, was call all our partners and make sure we're all aligned, because that could create some significant issues. And most of the time, people were doing the right things. I think lots of people, nobody panicked. I think it was very different than 2009. Nobody panicked. And I think people were doing the right thing. So of course we're challenging them in some cases, but that was really our priority at that time. And it's still today, by the way, our priority, because as you said, Peter, I don't think we can see the bottom. Actually, I don't think we can see the impact. I don't think we can see the impact on the rents. We've seen some impact on the values, but it's difficult to have an idea. I think we can see some impact on, for example, on how the office as an asset class will behave or will change, and I think there's lots of discussion on this, and I'm sure we'll have the chance to talk about that. Yeah, look, I think Daniel is right. I think if we all believe we're going to get better pricing and better returns, it's not going to be that simple. Yes, you will get probably better returns if you take significantly higher risk. So if you go and buy a 5-star hotel, yeah, there's going to be a distressed market for 4 or 5-star hotels at the moment. There's going to be a question mark on office, on very traditional offices, because there is less capital chasing, traditional offices, and lots of capital is shifting from office to logistics. But for logistics, for instance, for core logistics, yields are getting sharper. They're getting sharper in Asia. They're getting sharper in Germany. They're getting sharper in France. So there is no significant discount. Generally, the repricing, the discounts we've seen, okay, and this is I'm generalizing, but at least we'll get somewhere with that, is for value add or opportunistic. And the reason we've seen discounts or repricing on value add and opportunistic is because there is a shortage of debt at the moment. There was the banks were very absent, and that was normal, in the spring. They're back now, a little bit. They're back, but they're still not as involved as they were. A lot of funds. Or a lot of PE funds who cover, for instance, Europe from London are not able to travel, so there's less competition to go and see assets and visit assets. So we've seen some discounts, some repricing on value-add or development projects, whether it's in the UK, in France, probably less in Germany. Germany has done well; it's held up pretty well because there is a strong domestic market. Now, one of the reasons we've seen repricing is because before the crisis, there was almost no differentiation, and this is true, for example, in Paris. There was almost no differentiation between pricing of a core asset and a value-add asset. You would almost, for a very good building, well located, you'd probably pay almost the same price for an occupied building or a vacant building, if that was a very strong building. And I think that's crazy, and we've seen this happen in the past. We've seen this happening in 2007 and 2008 when we saw what happened after. But again, there was no differentiation of pricing between the two asset classes or these two kind of risk profile. And so today we're back to a normal situation. So lots of people are saying, "Oh, there has been repricing. There is repricing. There are discounts compared to the February pricing." But I think the February pricing were not normal and were not sustainable. So yes, there is some adjustments, but probably not as much as we think. And then Daniel is right. Yes, you have adjustment on pricing, but lots of people, lots of our assumptions will have to take into account a weakening office market, for instance. Yeah, rental decline, which we haven't seen. So the question about doing a deal or looking at opportunity is which one is is the adjustment, is the pricing adjustment big enough to compensate the potentially weaker leasing demand in the next 2 years. So, this is what we're seeing, but generally the more risky projects or deals you're looking at, and the higher discounts compared to, again, some very high prices in the past, you can see, and of course less competition. So we've seen this, but we're going to be really selective, really careful. There are differences by country and by sectors. As I said, logistics, for instance, there's no adjustments at all, and everybody today wants to invest in logistics.
You bring up a good point. I've been doing this for 35 years, and if we look at this from simply an economic cycle, and clearly it's much different because of the social costs of the pandemic. But banks, even though they might have been a little more lenient in recent months with the pickup, the fact is, as we know, as the economic decline continues, and it will, because there is no cure, there's really no antibody right now, we could see renewed shutdowns. Banks will retrench because every loan requires a hit to reserves, and reserves mean a hit to EPS. So if we're starting to look at situations where the banks retrench, debt financing becomes more problematic. And then we have to go to alternative capital providers, which by very nature, because of their LPs, have a higher return threshold. So given the lack of, or potentially lack of debt of value-add development opportunities, logistics, data centers, and others right now? Or do we start looking at some of the unloved sectors, retail, maybe even offices and hospitalities, from a repositioning strategy to a new asset class? Daniel, you, and then same question for you, Karim.
Yeah, I think with my AustralianSuper hat on, we'd be in the former camp quote unquote paying up for expensive sectors. I think Karim made the point at the start that arguably the world is as uncertain now as it has been over the last 6 months. Therefore, I think, to try and, catch a falling knife or take a contrarian position on some of these sectors that have been negatively impacted is a very hard thing to do. And, at AustralianSuper, we're a long-term investor. When we buy assets, we underwrite 10 years and we are hopeful we can keep them for 10 years because we're a growing fund and it's hard work to sell and then buy again. So we're looking for assets that we can hold for a long period of time. And I think as I sit here right now, I think I'd prefer to sort of overpay for an asset I feel comfortable will withstand the next 5 to 10 years, as opposed to trying to catch a falling knife. But the marketplace has a lot of different participants, and there's certainly investors like the PE houses, etc., who have that sort of nimbleness and risk appetite and risk capital to make those decisions.
Yeah, look, today, I agree with you, Daniel. I think today is not the time to start doing things you don't understand. Yeah, I think this is clearly, you will make mistakes. Yeah, it's for everybody has his own, preferences. Everybody has the asset class they understand the best. They know how to manage the best. They have their local expertise, and I think it's time to refocus on your own fundamentals and your own expertise. So we're doing this. We are not doing stuff we don't understand. I talked about 5-star hotel. If someone has never invested in 5-star hotel and thinks sees a 5-star hotel as a distressed opportunity, even if it's distressed, potentially there is room for mistake there. So be careful. I think what we're doing today is we're being really selective, but we have been actually quite active during the lockdown on the investment space. I spoke about how we manage our partners, our tenants, our portfolio, but we actually very quickly started looking at opportunities because we have offices in not every single country, but the key hubs in Europe and in Asia. So we had people who were able to go and look and visit assets and actually price and bid on assets. For example, in Paris, we bought an old industrial site in the 11th district of Paris, which is a vibrant district for the ones who know it, Boulevard Voltaire. And we're going to do a mixed-use project there. There's even a street in the project, so there's going to be a small street. We're going to do lofts, residential, retail, office. And we actually secured that deal during the lockdown. We had people who went during the lockdown, have seen the asset. We signed during the lockdown because we were locally here. And we didn't actually use debt. We have the chance and the luck, I would say, not to. We don't necessarily need to raise third-party financing. And I've said that banks were not necessarily present for opportunistic or development projects. So we took advantage of this, and we were able to act quickly and secure opportunities. We've done the same for logistic developments in France, in Germany. We're looking at stuff in China and in Australia. This is globally. Again, we probably secured roughly $1 billion of transactions in the last 6 months, and they were all like really, opportunistic from a timing standpoint. And so we're quite proud of that. Now it's time. It's important to generate long-term performance on these deals. But we've been active, and we've been more active than I thought at the beginning of the lockdown. Now, to your question, Peter. I think we can look at either different things we can look at, but before the crisis, our intention was to do less office because we have a significant exposure in office, so we didn't want to necessarily increase our exposure to office too much. We'll continue to invest in office, but in the right office at the right price. We wanted to do more residential and more logistics, and this crisis has actually given us more comfort into this strategy because we'll definitely do this. So logistics, and clearly logistics, whenever we create value, when logistic developments, value-added logistics, something that we're going to continue to do, and we see actually great opportunities at the moment. Same for residential. But we're also looking at, you've spoken about alternative sectors, data center, life science. I agree with your comment, Daniel, on scale. We also, every time we look at a new sector, or a deal, or a partnership, or a program, we always think about how we can gain scale. But I think there is actually, these sectors will grow. we're looking at the moment at life science opportunities. We believe in this sector. We think there's a amazing demand coming from this sector. So lots of demand for office lab, for medical activities, as long as you're in the right corridor, in the right clusters, in the world. So in the US, in India, and in the UK. So we're looking at deals of this kind. Data center as well. That's something we're looking at. Mixed-use projects. Generally mixed-use projects where we can change neighborhoods, when we can have impact, a positive impact on the communities. That's something as well that we're looking at. So these are new themes that we are, we're focusing on in parallel of, I would say, logistic or residential, which today became, an institutional asset class, but not, I wouldn't say traditional asset class, but an institutional asset class. Regarding office, there is a question mark on office, and I think it's important to bring the debate forward. We will continue to invest in office. We like office, but as I said, we like the right office. In France, for the ones who are familiar, we've launched the Arboretum project in Nanterre, which is basically 120,000 square meter campus, low carbon campus in a 25-hectare park. It's going to be all in wood. It's going to have lots of outdoor spaces. We're fostering well-being, health, flexibility services into this project. Lots of botanical gardens. We're going towards horizontality instead of verticality on office. And as long as we have the right office that is really addressing the new themes, the new trends that we're seeing, and that we saw actually before the crisis, we'll invest into these kind of products as well.
Thank you so much. I want to pivot back to Daniel, because I know you had a couple points on this. Then I'd like to pivot to longer-term opportunities. So going back to you, Daniel.
Yeah, just a couple of quick points, but I just wanted, if I wanted to take more risk and enhance returns, I take more risk in the sectors that I like. So, logistics, go spec logistics, go secondary, highly levered. I increase the risk profile in sectors that I think are less risky. And onto your point around the ability of finance, I think the nice thing about markets is they can be efficient. I know from an AustralianSuper point of view, we've been talking a lot about providing development financing. We've already done a couple of transactions, and we're increasingly so. So to be honest, we're delighted that the banks have pulled back. We think it's a real opportunity for a fund like ours who can underwrite the real estate, don't mind the cash flow drawdown, and potentially can take a longer term view as well. So yeah, we think that presents an opportunity for us, and there's certainly other increasingly number of alternative lenders emerging in the market.
Karim, you brought up a very good point in the current environment, and that is stick to your knitting. Focus, particularly in the short term, but also for the longer term, on what you know and what you're an expert at. I couldn't agree more. With 5 families as part of the Wimmer family office and our partner family office and tens of billions of assets, we're entrusted with multi-generational wealth. And so we're going to stick to those areas of real estate that we know very well. However, there are longer-term opportunities here to discuss, particularly health sciences, new technologies. As I discussed in my opening remarks, we have an opportunity as leaders and thought leaders in the particular environment that we're in to forge new partnerships, to talk more about socially responsible investing, greener buildings, pioneering these new technologies, monitoring health and well-being, focusing on undeveloped and underprivileged cities. So in terms of the pivot here to longer-term opportunities, how are you, Karim, at Ivanhoe Cambridge, and then turning to you, Daniel, and AustralianSuper, looking at the longer-term opportunities and potential pivots? Or are you going to just stick to your knitting where you're good at and maybe just doing the longer-term pivots at the margin to those important areas that I mentioned?
No, look, we always think long-term when we invest. Yeah, we're not a fund, so we're not squeezed by time. We don't have to, we're not necessarily here to maximize IRRs and, of course, sell as soon as the value has been created. So we have taken positions into longer-term projects. I mentioned the Duo Towers in Paris that we're building at the moment. This is a project we've taken position in 2013. We launched the construction in 2017, and these towers will be delivered in 2021. So that's an 8-year project, yeah. And we've been, so we haven't really. If lots of other investors, wouldn't take an 8-year or 10-year view on a project like this one. So that's an example of something we do. But I think, Peter, you're right. You know, I would say, like, even 2 or 3 years ago, everybody was only focusing on making money. You know, if you ask everybody, what's your mission, what's your vision, okay, what's your job? Yeah, what's your job? Your job is to make money. I mean, to create value, to make money. And I think, look, things are changing. I mean, on our end, at least, you know, I'm not sure about the others, but things are changing. Our mission is yes, to create value, to generate long-term performance for our pensioners. You know, clearly that stays, and that's key. But we also want to have a social impact on the environment, on the communities, on the cities, on the neighborhoods. We're putting these two in parallel. And today, if we are looking at something that just generates value in the short term, but doesn't have, is not wired towards impact investing, yeah, we wouldn't do it. We wouldn't use capital for this. If tomorrow you ask me, would I buy a standalone office building in a traditional office area which I cannot improve, I cannot change, you know, just, you know, deploying capital into this, we would probably won't do it. Unless, of course, it's an amazing pricing or distressed opportunity, we would not do it. But if you tell me, look, go and buy a project, an industrial site in the center of Paris, create a neighborhood, change the flavor of the area, improve the area, build residential, build retail, while still you're obviously generating performance for our shareholders. This is what we look at, and of course these projects are long-term projects. These are projects that we today want to focus on more and more. We used to look at real estate over 30 years ago, or let's say in the 80s or in the 90s. Real estate was a commodity, was a physical asset class. Yeah, everybody spoke about real estate in terms of square meter or pricing per square meter. In the last 20 years, real estate became a financial asset class. Yeah, I grew up like this. I mean, I was like cash flows. That's the only thing that I was focused on. Yeah, and I think today it's changing. Yes, it's cash flows, but it's also what is real estate bringing to our lives. Yeah, so it's about flexibility, it's about service, it's about ESG. If we are not able to build the best ESG standards in a project, we won't do the project, because we believe that this will impact the long-term performance of that project, not necessarily the short-term, but the long-term. So that's clearly for us a condition to do a project. Flexibility, I say, services, innovation. Connected environments, all these themes today are part of our investment decision, and this is how actually we project ourselves into the long term.
Thanks, Karim. Danielle, we have just literally a minute less, so if you could just sum up on those questions, and then I'll just give a summary of everybody.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of reiterate what Karim said. I mean, the big thematic is ESG, and yes, it's partly about being good people, but that's where value is going to be created. You know, people want, whether they be residential tenants or commercial tenants, they want buildings and assets with great ESG credentials. So that's probably the big one. And then just quickly, yeah, we're always looking for new sectors. We've been a bit slow historically, and we've let the PE guys, etc., squeeze a lot of the early value out of things like co-living and data centers, etc. Yeah, we'd like to get better at that, and I guess a high risk appetite to get in early on some of these sectors which have a long-term sort of thematic tailwind.
Thanks, Daniel. Listen, I believe that over the next 24 months, we're going to be characterized by a couple of things. We're going to see more forced liquidations. We're going to see short-term liquidity needs of developers, particularly the smaller and medium-sized ones. There's going to be opportunities for joint ventures and consolidation. The leaders here at MIPIM, my colleagues here on the panel and others, we really have a great opportunity over the next couple of years to support our real estate industry and also help humankind. So I want to thank everybody from MIPIM, my co-chairs, and everybody in the audience. I don't know if you saw, I had to bend down before. I had one of my 3 daughters try to give me a gummy bear while under the table, so I had to push her away. So again, thanks for all the technical issues and the delays, and look forward to a great panel for the rest of the time.
au-delà de la performance, comme vous l'expliquez là. D'accord, bah, écoutez, très bien. Et puis moi, je regarderai, puis je me prends en place avec cette personne aussi. Là, Audrey, voilà. Merci, monsieur. Au revoir. Bonjour. Bonjour. Pas de problème. Je représente Non. Ah, d'accord. Et ça marche super bien. Ouais, ouais. Ils sont en train de faire un contrat sur plusieurs
everybody for joining our session. Thank you, good afternoon, and so let's start the session. Oh, I'm going to do that. Let's rest a little bit. And I would like to start this session by a quote, by quoting Stephanie Carline from Kieran Timberlake, which is one of the architectural agency from the US, who is really leading the fight against climate change. And she wrote an article in a very famous newspaper, American newspaper, a few months ago, and she said, "I have been polluting the planet for years. I'm not an oil executive, I'm an architect." I think the COVID act as a wake call, and we all realize our collective fragility. And at the same time, we realized that we were able to make radical and fast change. On climate change, the scientists are perfectly clear. We have 10 years to act. 10 years, it's basically in a political life, is less than 2 mandates for mayor. For a real estate company is 1 or 2 project life. So it's basically nothing. The real estate industry has clearly a key responsibility if it's not the main contributor in climate change. The numbers are speaking for themselves. Building, it's 40% of the GHG global emission. 30% for the operational use, so mostly energy, and 10% for the construction itself. And if we are following the predictions say, basically, it was before COVID, but let's be optimistic for the industry, but the predictions say it's approximately 1 billion new home that needs and that will be built in by 2050. Let's stop there. 1 billion new home. That's basically the size of a city like New York that we need to build every month until 2050. So however we build, the question is seriously, is that sustainable? Can our planet sustain 1 billion, one new city like New York every month until 2050? I think the response is very clear if you speak from a human perspective. And and the reality is that we know what we exactly need to do, what the real estate industry need to do to change radically their way of doing. The first thing, and it's directly connected to the number I provide, the first thing is work on the existing stock. Work on the existing stock, that means invest massively in retrofit, and as well reuse as much as we can the existing building before thinking of demolition. The second thing is to reuse existing material and to administer used material. Buildings of today are resources of tomorrow, and we need to think that way. I really encourage you to have a look to what's happening these days in Amsterdam, for example, who they are really pushing the circular economy approach in the real estate, and it's very brilliant. The third thing is if really you need to build new, and that's really only the third thing, if really you need to build new, in that case you need to build for the future. That means build to last, build flexible, so there is no need of demolition if the use change, build efficient in resource, and build efficient in energy. And the fourth point is finally design to foster sustainable lifestyle. The real estate market, architects are not only building blocks, they are creating the way people live in city, and that's very important. So maybe just 2 concrete examples. In most of the city, there is a rule today to say having a parking in each building, having a number of parking in each building. Today we need to switch with cycling parking. Every building needs to include cycling parking. The same, there is a lot of information about how do we design to foster zero waste behavior for the people who will live there. And I encourage you to have a look what the American Institute of Architecture has done on that. So if we follow these four rules and we act fast, And at scale, we may change, but we have only 10 years. So just to introduce our session now, after this very quick context, I would like to say, so we are going to have the session around two leading cities in the fight against climate change, Paris and Milan. They are both very involved in the C40 with the network involving more than 100 cities that are fighting climate change. And they are specifically very involved in the decarbonization of the built environment. During this session, the society will present their objective and their strategy to tackle climate change in the built environment. They will be accompanied by two famous French and Italian pioneer architects who will share with us how they are changing their practices in the wake of the climate emergency. So please let me introduce our speaker, and hopefully one of the speakers is going to join very, very soon. So the first speaker is going to be Pierfrancesco Maran, who is the Deputy Mayor of the City of Milan and is in charge of urban planning, green area, and agriculture, and urban agriculture. Marion, who is the advisor of Anne Hidalgo, the Mayor of Paris, in charge of architecture, and she is as well an environmental philosopher. And Carlo Ratti, who should join us in the coming minutes, is the director of the MIT Sensible City Lab and the founding partner of Carlo Ratti Associati. And our last speaker is Jakob+MacFarlane, the founding director of Jakob+MacFarlane, and is as well a member of the Architect Declare movement, and is going probably to share with us a few information about that. Please let me start maybe with you, Pierfrancesco, and let me ask you the first question. So Milan is tackling climate change through a wide range of action. You are very well known as one of the most efficient low-emission zone, and you are a world leader in cutting the emission from food production and food consumption. Please, can you tell us more about your policies and action to reduce emission from building and from construction?
Thank you, Helene. The numbers you gave before, you gave us, they are important. The problem is big, and many cities, many countries are making many efforts, but we know that it wasn't sufficient. We had a plan. You remember that we made a good job on food policies. It was connected also with the World Exposition we hosted in 2015. Milan in 2010 was considered by TomTom Index one of the 5 most congestion cities in Europe. Now no more. We are at the middle level because we introduced a congestion charge. Last year we had a new pollution charge, a pollution area at the entrance of the city. We pushed for the sharing policies. We are building new subways, so we had a big clash with traffic. Of course, building is still a problem because it's so difficult to create a big plan when you have a system like in cities with many owners in the same building. That is partially part of the problem, at least in Italy. That give the impression that it's easier to push on a new condition for new buildings. That is important because new buildings should be the best solution available on the market. But first, it's not sufficient that they have a good energy efficiency, but we have to implement other points. You were focusing on the fact that you have to reuse the new building. It's not always the same, and not always also for the last building we made, especially because nobody thought that there would be a crisis for offices. So, especially office buildings are thought to be just offices because you can't open window, you have the problem of escalators, etc. Now we have a new emergency because COVID changed the life of the cities, probably reduced the pollution we created last year. That is partially a good news in a so bad 2020. But it responsibilizes citizens more than before. It's always a struggle to push for climate change and to convince citizens they have to participate, because it's not an easy win. For some, it's an opportunity. We see it on mobility. If we created new cycling lines and we made new cycling lanes, it's a good opportunity if you live not so far from your offices, but if you were used to get a car every day, of course it can be considered a limit. So you have to convince people that they need. And of course, even the investment needed for refurbish buildings, it's an opportunity, but you have to involve citizens. Now the national government made a fund where if you invest on energy efficiency, you will have 100% plus 10% more in 5 years. It's important, but it's not so easy in any case to obtain results, because you have to convince every person in the building that they have to vote for that, and it's the only thing that is more complicated than to have a vote in the city hall. So we are in a system that is changing every day. I think we have high goals. We know what is the direction. Now it's the most difficult part. We have to realize those plans. And it's incredible that, I don't know, but when it's directly responsibility of the public, actually you can realize plan, for example, on mobility. When you have to include, actually we have good results on new, but we have to push more and more on the old one. And then we have, last point, I want to focus. You said that we need billions of new houses. Yes. But, for example, in Italy, we counted more or less 8 million of abandoned houses. Of course, they are not in the place where they are needed. But it's possible that, I'm sure that the cities will go up again after 1, 2, 3 years of problems connected with COVID. But I think that we are also rediscovering a sort of double identity for each other, where you have the city you work and maybe the city your grandparents were born, or the place for summer where you can be there again. And so we have the last point. If you don't have, if we have smart working and maybe you will go to work just 2 or 3 days a week, it's not excluded that you don't have to live 7 days a week in the city, but you can have 2 places. But you should find a way to use and to spend less for a place where you stay just 2 or 3 days. So not only the flexibility to move from housing to offices to production, but also the fact that even housing can be not just for the same person every day.
I think that's a very, very interesting point. On the before thinking about building, we should already think about the vacancy rate. And the number in a city like Paris are crazy. And since the COVID, they are even more crazy. So that's really a new way of considering the question that we need to think. And as well, Dominique Alba from Apure was telling me, if you think of the Haussmann, how many buildings we are demolishing because they are not the good use. If you think about the Haussmann model can be changed so easily, but in the 50 past year, we have specialized so much our building that when we have a shock, as we are living today, it's totally complicated. We have all of these buildings who are empty, and reinventing them is going to be a big, big, big challenge. I would like now to ask a question to Marion. Thank you, Marion. So, you have been on board in the city of Paris since already a long time, and in the past 6 years, Anne Hidalgo and Jean-Louis Messicoa has transformed, probably like nobody before, the Parisian real estate industry, raising the awareness of the industry on their responsibility to change and pushing them for more innovation and quality in this quite, let's be honest, conservative sector. So environment and climate change is the primary consideration of the city of this, for this mandate for the mayor. Please, could you give us an idea on how the city intends to accelerate decarbonization of the built environment in Paris?
Yes, so speaking about the crisis, I think it was really a very interesting urban experience because we were able to see in a few days what buildings were actually flexible and what buildings were not. It was just completely obvious. And for people and for mayors to see that most office buildings were completely empty during the crisis and that we were not able to do anything else in those buildings is simply not acceptable. Like, we cannot have all this stock of existing buildings that is not available for other uses. And in the contrary, we saw some very interesting uses. For example, hotels, which could become sometimes hospitals, or just the scale of the housing building in Paris, where people completely rediscovered, for example, the value of the courtyard. In Paris, a lot of people have a courtyard, but they don't use it. It's just the way where you cross every day and maybe you say hello to your neighbor. But this time they saw the value of this courtyard where you can do many things and where actually it could also become a garden, and some people started to make it a garden, and people also rediscovered the value, of course, of their neighborhood, of what we call the 15-minute city. What do you have 15 minutes from your home, and sometimes you go like 1 hour from your home while you have it very close. So that's very important because I think it was a good moment for everybody just to ask simple questions, and like, what buildings do we want? What buildings are not acceptable in the city? And you said that the Haussmann model is actually very flexible, and it's true. I mean, you don't even ask the question when you have a Haussmann building. In 10 years, it can be a space for a doctor, a housing unit, an office, and to see that in the real estate industry there has been a regression and not a progression on that matter is I think very it's a big question. Like, how could we become less flexible? So that's the big questions we have now. And in fact, as you said, we in the last mandate we organized those big competitions which were called Reinventing Paris, Reinventing Cities, and they were very helpful because it helped us questioning this industry and questioning the materials and everything we find in buildings. And I like this comparison between buildings and food very much, because I think it's a very simple image to say that you want to know what's in actually what you eat, what are the ingredients. But for many people before, we were not interested in the ingredients of our buildings. Like, if you ask somebody what is actually inside, like where do the ingredients come from, nobody knows. It's crazy. Like, so we began asking those questions every time, and you get crazy answers because, for example, I don't know how many times I heard that it's not possible to build in wood or to build with stones, and it's just the way we built for thousands of years. So it's the same thing, like flexibility. You're like, okay, how were we able before but not anymore today, and like what's the problem there? And now the crisis, I think, really calls an acceleration of how we plan the city. It helped us, of course, like Milan, like many other cities, do tactical urban planning, moving things faster, especially in terms of mobility. And Anne Hidalgo announced this morning that all the temporary bike lanes will be made definitive, and the Rue de Rivoli also will remain a street for bikes and taxis and buses, but no more individual cars. And I think that's very important also to say that now we know there is a climate emergency. We will not wait 6 years to do radical things because we just don't have the time. So now we have to go fast, of course, to keep a dialogue with the people. But in terms of mobility, in terms of real estate urban planning, we have to go faster, and we have, as you said, the priority is really to have a different look at our stock. I mean, Paris is a very dense city. We have so many millions of square meters that are underused. And so now it's really our priority. We look at our stock, and for every building, every municipal building, we start by those buildings because it's easiest for us. We think, okay, we have this school. What can we do in this school during weekends? What can we do in this school during evenings? And when you have a courtyard, it can become a garden. And when you have a school, it can become sometimes a shelter. Like, we really have to look differently at all our buildings because it's just an amazing stock. And I think the private sector should have the same look at their buildings. And when we build, but also after it's being built, it doesn't mean that we should not build anymore. Like, contrary to some other parties or other people, we still think that we have to build at some places in the city because it's necessary first for a social mix, because there are still a lot of people who want to access the city, and sometimes we have to build housing units for them because they cannot afford. And I think it's important to say, because it's always complicated between not in my backyard and ecological reasons. So we say that at some point you have to build, and also when there are places that need animation and need a bit of density. Like, for example, in Paris, it's all those places between Paris and the suburbs where sometimes it's completely empty, and it's places you don't want to go to have a walk, and sometimes in those spaces it can be useful to build because you can create a new centrality, you can bring people, you can bring life. And so we're not saying we shouldn't build anymore, but we are saying that every square meter that is being built has to have a meaning. Like, it's not free to build, we're using a lot of matter. So every time we build, it is precious, and it has to have a social and an environmental impact. We cannot, we're not building for free, so, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Maybe a question for Brendan. For Brendan now. So, Brendan, you are the architect of two of the winning projects of the C40 Reinventing Cities competition, one in Paris-Saint-Denis and another one in Reykjavik in Iceland. Both projects aim for an ambitious net zero carbon objective in a whole life approach. That means considering not only the operational phase, which has been the case for a lot of years and is still the case for most of the thinking, but as well integrating the emission that came from the construction itself and the end of life. In both cases, you have developed very rigorous objective and strategy to decarbonize your project, putting the carbon impact at the core of the strategy and the decision-making process of your project. That was very interesting. Please, could you share with us a little bit about this expertise that you have developed through this competition and other projects?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the discussion because you can tell, obviously I think for all the listeners too, you can tell that the thing is shifting very quickly. And I thought that was very interesting, this discussion on reusing existing and also recycling. And all of that's moved at an incredibly fast discussion, because we've had discussion groups like this in Oslo and Copenhagen. And it's very interesting to see how fast things are moving, how exponential, and the subjects change, and they're becoming much more radical in their needs, and they're becoming more pushy. It's very interesting to hear about the city of Paris in terms of how it's moving up too, looking at all of its building stock, seeing what they can kind of quite radically do with it. So building on that sort of energy, you know, that speed on which the discussion's going, I would say the two projects. One is it would be interesting to then make the segue to, first of all, Paris. We had a site, or have a site in Paris in the Plaut area, Saint-Denis area, very close to the Olympic Games, right on the border of the future Olympic Games for 24. And it's an old building that, in a sense, belonged to EDF. It was an old building to clean and repair huge industrial transformers for a vast site, which was basically a very polluting site of electricity generating for, we know in the 20s and 30s, a vast network of underground metro systems which demanded electricity in Paris. It was generated in this part of Paris. So there was to do that though, two resources we used, a lot of carbon and water. And one of them was heavily polluting. So we know within the site that we're on, it's already quite heavily polluted. The other thing that we know about the site, or we were given in a sense as a problem, was, so-called problem, was we had to keep an existing building. And, you know, it's known as the cathedral. It's a huge kind of heroic 1930s piece of sort of Art Deco, past Art Deco concrete architecture. It's an extraordinary building, and when we first looked at it, we fell in love with the idea of revealing the concrete, not filled with insulation in terms to bring the building back to life. And I think this is a huge, it's a big subject actually. As we say, we take on old buildings and we reuse them, and at the same time we've got a lot of contradictory laws which are coming into place about levels of insulation which are necessary to do that. So I think there is a fight that's developing there, and I think the Plaut project is for us a kind of a precursor of that fight. It's a fight to say that it's an old building. You do not have to fill it with 60 centimeters of insulation to preserve an old building and to bring it back to life and make it available for people. You don't need it. What we did with our project is we have no insulation, and we have a thing called the plug, the energy plug, and it's a new piece. So it's very interesting, Marion, to hear about the necessity of new things at times. This is a new piece. It's called the energy plug. It is about bringing energy on a different levels, social as well as energy, back into an old building and changing the air temperature in that old building. So bringing the temperature to a constant throughout the year. By doing that, we have a glass house facing south, which produces food, and that can be sold in the restaurant, etc., downstairs. It's also a pedagogic glass house, so we bring in school children and people from around the area. So we make it available to associations, so we re-energize the association. So it's one of these kind of projects which is trying to be win-win. It's trying to do good to the local environment, bring in energy as a resource from the sun, and then inject that into an old building. So we're trying to create a symbiotic relationship with an old existing piece of infrastructure. And we're not filling it with insulation to keep it alive. Therefore, we're not using, again, the massively abusing resource to build. The big thing, I think, in the city of Paris in the future is to bring back those old buildings, but not to fill them with tons and tons and tons of building products in order to make them energy efficient. I think this idea of energy efficiency has to be absolutely looked at very carefully. What the issue is, we should start with ourselves, what temperatures we want to live with. Do we really want to live with, the temperatures we've been living with in the past 30 years? Or are we willing to reduce those temperatures down and accept also higher temperatures when they go up? And how do we do that? And we do know that we have a lot of capacity there with air exchange. Bringing air across a building has a huge impact on air movement, has a huge impact on this sense of what a temperature is that you can live with. And I think that's an issue. I would lead that on to the discussion on architects declare, because it's something that we're very interested in inside that group, is to how we maybe can also have a voice on, and we should have a voice on that legislation, which we'll be going through. So that's an issue. Anyway, that would be Plaut. And then the other one is the, so we have a lot of issues. Of course, we're trying to, we have a lot of points to bring down the carbon. It's a wood project, so of course there's massive arguments on reducing the normal carbon impact on a building. Of course, as I mentioned, the solar energy. We're using energy systems that exist within the Plaut site, which are wasted energies. We're plugging into those underground and using those within the building. It's the air recycling. It's the use of natural products. For example, you're well aware of the soil coming from the underground metro project, I should say, of the future. That soil being used as an insulating product for the building, which has been developed with Saint-Gobain and a bunch of other people. We have energy batteries for a lead generation on that, which will take the energy from that sun and reuse it over time within the building, so that we're a precursor with the building on that. So there's a lot developing towards the idea of the energy plug. And the other thing, the other project, of course, is the Reykjavik project, which on that we put a lot of emphasis on this issue of prefabricating the building offsite, so reducing massively the amount of energy on the building time and on site, as well as using, it will be Iceland's largest wooden structure. And again, what we're using there is an interesting sheep wool on the inside, which is a natural product that has been used for years in Iceland, and we're using that as a local product to do on all the insulation for the building. We have a whole lot of energy systems. The thing there, we're aiming for close to net zero, and we can do that with Iceland because Iceland essentially has clean energy. Yeah. And it's an energy which comes, it's fantastic. Yeah. And it's like a bit like New Zealand. There's a lot of clean energy out there. New Zealand is hydro, tiny bit of volcanic. Iceland is volcanic.
The grid is already clean, so you don't have to put.
So we were lucky. We were lucky because we could plug into that clean energy grid, and therefore the carbon calculation, the net carbon calculation, could be reduced radically. So that was certainly a thing of luck on that. And therefore, the other thing that's very important with Iceland, like Plaut, is we're going for a completely clean construction site. So that the machines on the site, for example, are not fossil fuel. It's all electricity. And then both of the projects, we have an overtime cycle, life cycle examination of the building over the years to see how all of these points, reducing carbon points, are actually playing out.
And I want to say just on this machine engine, I was discussing with the mayor of Reykjavik, who telling us that they want to use your experience to really see how they could create a market for these only electrical vehicles for construction site. And that's something they are. Yeah, please.
I was going to say something sorry, I was going to say something. Two or three things that come out of that was what was fantastic with the Icelandic people is they said they do not want any. We came with the developer and we said, would you like car parking? And of course, the Icelandic, the people of Iceland in this particular site said no car parking. Yeah. We want to force people living in this project, it's 25,000 meters squared of housing. We want to force them out of their car and into green mobility. And the building, so that was one point.
Zero
which was
car.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. And so it's a building that sits on the landscape. So the whole issue of water, imprint of natural water going down into the land, we do it. We cover something like 30% of the site. It's really tiny. And the rest of the site is direct groundscape. So there's things like that are very, very interesting within the Iceland, politically what they're trying to push.
Thank you very much, Brendan. I have a second question for you, Pierfrancesco, just because we were discussing on the reinventing, and I have to say how Milan has been crazy successful on their reinventing cities model. I have to say it's, thousands of people. The last meetup we organized, you had to open another room for online meeting, and it was before the COVID, because so many people, and I have the chance to see that the second competition, we organized it during the COVID, and we had this discussion, should we continue or not? And you decide to continue, and actually the project we are coming is even more ambitious. That I think something is happening as well in the real estate. So maybe you would like to, I would be interested to see how do you think this has impact the mindset of the Milanese and Italian industry?
Well, first we have to say that the model of reinventing is a very good idea, and it's important that it was not stopped in Paris where you thought there's this project, but many cities like Milan, we copied and implemented and adapted this idea to our needs. It was interesting because we were not used to ask also a project when we had to sell a building or a place, but our rules gave just the idea of money. While if we go on ideas, we can have a better project. We know what it will happen in this place, and so it's important. The reaction on the first edition was very good. We were not surprised because we hoped that it happened, but probably not that way. But we selected some small areas just to test the strategy. Then, to be true, 2019 for Milan was on the economical side probably the best year ever from decades. So we felt ready to try for bigger places. Now the world has changed, but we decided just to give 1 month more this spring to the groups, and we had many requests. And the judges said that also the quality was very good. So now we are in the second phase, and next spring we will have the winners. We hope they will arrive at the end. Of course, it's a tender where even somebody selected can jump and not go to conclude their work, but we are optimistic. And we think that even in this edition, we made some effort to improve, and we have also ideas for the future. For example, I think that now we are really focused on climate change, and we have to go on. Actually, we have to push even on the social side of the project. That it will be the next, if I imagine a third edition of Reinventing Cities, I don't know if we will do because we will have an election next May. I think that we will have to move from just, but it's not just, energy efficiency and climate change to the fact that it should push also social change that is partially just visible in the project of this time.
Thank you. And I have to say, still one of the criteria, social benefit. But yeah, on we can push it further. Marion, you maybe just one question on the retrofit, because we know that retrofit is a big topic. Pierfrancesco Maran was explaining how it was complicated to push that. Not just incentive or who can help, but it's difficult because when you have multi-owners and everything. At the same time, we are forced for 3 months people to stay home. We are all wearing masks and everything. So the question of what is complicated, what is possible seems to be a little bit re-questioned. So how a city of Paris, and we know that the courage is here, is thinking about that?
I think in real estate and architecture, it's also much a matter of what signals you send to the market and to the creative people. If I say, like, what I discovered with Reinventing Paris is really how you can put light on some sites that are not may not be like very attractive. They may not be in the best areas. They may not be like the best places. But if you if as a city like Paris, when you have this power, because you're a big city and you can attract money and good ideas, if you know how to tell a story and how to bring the good people at the good moment, I think anything is possible in a way, and that's really my experience from those competitions. And I think we have to do that now with retrofitting. Like, you know, I often go to architecture juries, and we have a lot of juries for like social housing when we do ecological retrofitting. And every time we have like 10 architects who are competing, while on like new buildings we'll have 200 architect teams. And every time I wonder, like, why are the architects not interested in those competitions? And I think it's also our role as a city to make this topic and those competitions attractive. And we have to show that that we need creativity. Like, it's not just a technical issue. It's really also an issue about design, and it's also it's not just retrofitting a building. Like, you can do so many things when you retrofit. You can change the public space around. You can change the way you reuse water. You can change. You can bring, of course, green areas. You can change the way the building lives with all the neighbors. So I think we have to make it a more holistic issue, and to make it sexy in a way, so that people want to work about it, and so that we attract talents on that. So that's what we will do in this mandate, definitely, because we want creativity on that topic.
Very brilliant. So thank you. No, I think it's a very big topic. Brendan, maybe the last question for you, and maybe Carlo and Ratti one day. So, Architect Declare, maybe just explain us who they are, where it's come from, what you are doing.
Yeah, who they are is an English group that got together. There were Sterling Prize winners, and but it was initiated really by a couple of people before that who were very interested in biomimicry and in fact saw that in fact it wasn't working, this idea of getting the word out, the message out. So they wanted to actually attract the winners of a very prestigious prize, get them to talk, get them to form a group, and they did, and that was the origins of Architect Declare, which was only as late as 2019, so it's only last year. It's a very recent thing, but it's a phenomenon. And of course, when we met them in Oslo, we immediately became interested in this idea, and we in Paris formed our own Architect Declare. Now you have about 200 groups of different engineers declare, etc. But from that you have, it's a worldwide phenomenon now. Of our offices in France, we were six offices that put ourselves together to initiate it. And now we have over 500 signatories of groups of architects in France, which is fantastic. In England, we have close to 1,000. Because it becomes a kind of a worldwide phenomenon and therefore a network. So it's no longer a national boundary, and that's what's actually very, very exciting, and it's absolutely necessary. It's a mondial, phenomenon, and so they have an 11-point agenda. We have an 11-point agenda, which is a lot of the points have been talked about today. Bringing things down, the aim of carbon zero, recycling, reuse of existing infrastructure, and it goes on. There's about an 11-point agenda which is put out, which is shared by that community. And then the idea is that those groups go off and help initiate within their own cultures other incentives. So there's a kind of connectivity, and also where we are our own group in France. And I think some of the things that we're very interested in right now is one of them is definitely the story that I was talking about the insulation legislation, which is coming in there, which of course the government is behind initiating and getting all of those buildings insulated, but there's contradictions, and we want to make those very apparent to the political leaders about the abuse of resource that will come with that. Yeah. So that's one example.
The whole-life approach, even for retrofits.
Yeah, we just
not
can't,
just for
absolutely, we cannot sit back and let that happen as architects. because as a political agenda, it looks very good, but in the reality, the abuse of resources is massive. And so we need to be very, very clear about that. So that's one of the things we're working on, among a lot of other things. They're going off in different directions.
Thank you very much. I think we are coming at the end. Thank you very much for being there. And thank you, Pierfrancesco, Marion, and Brendan. And that's just the beginning.
if I have an idea of a competition that we need to put together for a group. That's great. That's good. That's MacFarlane. That's great. In New Zealand, but my family was from Liverpool, and his dad lived in Liverpool most of his life was Scots. So from Dundee. So it's nothing. Just up the line. That's great. That's great. No, but it's very, very good contact. And talking of contact.
Juste une question, est-ce que vous avez été là ou pas du tout? Ouais. Il reste à faire là?
Le pupitre, il a été fait?
spécialisé voilà, sur les questions urbaines qui intéressent beaucoup.
Et du coup, vous appuyez que les étudiants qui ont fait ce tronc commun ou vous êtes ouvert sur des gens qui rejoignent le programme?
On est ouvert raisonnablement, c'est-à-dire qu'on a essentiellement des gens qui viennent de chez nous, mais on accueille des ingénieurs, on accueille des architectes.
C'est bon à savoir.
Ouais.
D'accord, donc c'est une année.
C'est 2 ans.
C'est 2 ans?
C'est 2 ans, mais
c'est un équivalent master en master.
Voilà, exactement. Et c'est très professionnalisant.
Oui.
On a beaucoup de temps passé, soit en stage, bien sûr, soit en mode commande. On a en fait tout un tas d'entreprises qui passent commande auprès des étudiants, un peu en mode consultant, sur tout un tas de sujets. Ça peut être la construction de logements dans telle ou telle ville, etc. Et puis par ailleurs, moi je m'occupe d'un programme de formation continue. Il y a vraiment des professionnels à l'immobilier qui viennent nous voir, c'est souvent des très bons techniciens. Merci. J'ai des promoteurs, des investisseurs, des financeurs qui viennent me voir pour qu'on leur explique un peu plus ce qui se passe au niveau des villes. C'est-à-dire en termes de soit de la demande qui change, c'est-à-dire les questions de vieillissement, etc., transformation du territoire, soit les questions de politique publique. C'est-à-dire en gros métropolisation, qu'est-ce que veulent les élus, comment on fait pour obtenir les marchés, se conformer aux demandes. Voilà, c'est un peu ce qu'on fait. Donc on fait de l'immobilier, mais pas comme les SEC ou HEC. On fait différemment avec beaucoup de sociales. Voilà.
Et vous avez des liens HEC, il n'y a rien d'immobilier HEC.
Oui, ils ont mis une chaire à un moment donné, puis ça c'est. Ouais, c'est les SEC.
Les SEC, puis Dauphine, la Sorbonne.
Ouais. Donc voilà pour moi. De votre côté, comme je regarde un peu votre biographie qui est très, très impressionnante, juste une question par rapport à la DI. Vous y êtes toujours.
Oui, bien sûr.
Vous n'êtes plus dans les instances?
Non, parce qu'en fait, j'ai une collaboratrice, Francesco Maran,
que j'ai vu sur le programme.
mon bras droit,
Ouais.
qui nous sont pas présidente de la DI. Comme moi, dans le même temps, j'étais présidente de l'ORIE. C'est une façon de repartir un peu
C'est l'effort, oui.
Bah oui, parce que ces associations, c'est très bien, mais ça prend du temps. Donc c'est difficile de faire.
J'imagine. D'accord.
Oui, mais bien sûr, je suis membre. Là, par exemple, j'ai animé cette semaine un forum utilisateur.
Bon, vous êtes au cœur de
Ah oui, bien
ce
sûr.
qui est en train de se dire.
J'étais à la table de Guyebon, président Nordine, que je connais très bien. J'ai des années de service à la DI. J'ai fait quand même beaucoup de choses.
D'accord. Donc, du coup, si je vous sollicite un jour pour une intervention chez nous, vous accepteriez?
Ah oui, bien sûr.
Bon, c'est un petit format, en général c'est 1h30 d'échange.
Bien sûr.
Parce que j'aime beaucoup ce type de témoignage, très très proche du terrain. D'accord, merci beaucoup.
Vous avez combien d'étudiants
Alors, en formation continue, en principe j'ai plutôt 25 étudiants. Contexte oblige, on a moins d'inscrits. Parce que les gens.
La formation continue, ça veut dire quoi? Parce que s'il y en a qui sont. Si vous avez des troncs communs.
C'est un autre parcours. En gros, la formation continue. Bonjour madame. Kireche, enchanté. Enchanté.
Bonjour, donc vous êtes
Séverine.
Chapus. Alors j'ai dit à Radio Ivo qu'on viendra peut-être ensemble, sinon on va les seuls, les saluer après la conférence si ça vous va.
D'accord.
Radio Ivo.
Je suis de retour au siège de BNP à 18h.
Ah, on verra si vous avez
Très bien. Ok.
Je suis contente de vous connaître parce que je connais beaucoup de monde dans votre maison.
Exactement.
Beaucoup de monde. C'était tout aperçu, mais on se connaissait pas.
Ouais, ça c'était. Je me rappelle vous avoir croisé, mais effectivement, beaucoup d'échanges tirés la route surtout.
Oui. Je te dis que ça fait pas longtemps. Et donc on était en train de parler
De la formation continue, donc c'est un autre parcours.
Ah d'accord, mais ils sont ensemble ou?
Pas tout à fait, non. C'est un peu des locaux à part. C'est un public qui est un peu à part dans le sens où c'est de la formation continue, donc on prend des gens qui ont 5-10 ans d'expérience, qui n'ont pas forcément eu un parcours très long au départ, et c'est pour ça qu'ils peuvent se former de nouveau, mais qui par contre ont un
demandé à ce que les portes soient ouvertes et à ce qu'on encourage les gens à venir. Et après, vous savez, on avait un networking day.
Non plus.
Pardon.
Voilà, exactement. Hein. C'est pas un affront. C'est pas contre nous. Non, je crois pas.
J'ai cru comprendre qu'à l'habitude, vous traversiez à vélo pour rejoindre Milan.
Oui, mais je suis allée cette année.
Ah oui?
D'accord.
Excellent.
Et quand on est revenu, mardi, je crois, c'était 3 jours avant le confinement, on est bien, on l'a fait quand même. C'est-à-dire que certains, finalement, ne l'ont pas fait, notamment parce que leur entreprise leur a interdit d'y aller. Et pour tous ceux à qui on n'avait pas interdit d'y aller, ils sont allés quand même.
Excellent.
Il y en a qui se sont regardés demander quelconque autorisation de peur, on leur dit non, parce que tu vas pas
faire l'autruche.
en fait, ce qui s'est passé, c'est qu'on n'avait pas un seul sponsor, on avait beaucoup de sponsors. Donc le sponsor principal, il nous a pas interdit d'y aller, il a juste dit que lui, il n'allait pas, ils étaient à deux, c'était les petits bières, parce qu'ils se sont dit, on a des très gros deals à gérer, si jamais on met en quarantaine au retour, ou si on attrape le Covid, vis-à-vis de nos clients, ça fait pas sérieux, quoi. On ne peut pas se permettre de prendre le risque qu'il y a un problème. Donc, ils n'étaient pas hostiles, ils étaient juste prudents. Et puis on a eu quelques maisons, surtout les anglo-saxons, qui ont été très catégoriques, en disant il n'y a pas de MIPIM, on n'allait pas à la randonnée caritative. D'accord. Il y a eu 2-3 boîtes qui se. Il y en a eu quelques-uns qui ont quand même énormément résisté, qui ont dit mais ça a fonctionné, parce que la visibilité, surtout mon engagement vis-à-vis des associations extrêmement constitutionnelles. Donc c'était.
Ouais, c'est génial comme initiative. C'est super. Et puis, je trouve que pour le coup, le MIPIM, Pierre Desmagnères est un peu à contre-temps, je trouve, dans ce qui s'y passe, en représentation, etc. Et donc, ce type de manière d'y aller, de faire vivre, de proposer autre chose, c'est quand même.
C'est assez incroyable parce que finalement, il y a eu un pot organisé par la République, vous savez, dans les cafés joyeux sur les Champs-Élysées, où il y avait l'expo là qui était quelque part, le MIPIM à Paris. Effectivement, c'était encore le début du confinement.
Je pense qu'on a encore pas pris la mesure.
Non, c'était les églises, c'était sur le chemin de retour. C'était pas encore en confinement, le MIPIM était annulé, mais bon. Donc, les affaires en gauche, le produit unique. Ça, c'est la randonnée caritative. Donc c'est formidable de se dire que finalement les cercles qui fait une chose, c'est exceptionnel. Et moi ce que j'ai à dire à titre personnel, c'est que ça pousse à la modestie parce que certains peuvent penser que j'ai un parcours professionnel relativement impressionnant. Et ben c'est rien par rapport à mon maternité, parce que dans le futur, le rayonnement du vélo, le nombre de gens qui sont impressionnés par mes performances à vélo, mon parcours et qui m'en parlent, qui ont l'air de tout laisser moi raisonner parce que j'ai fait professionnellement, ça remet des choses, ça remet des choses.
En tout cas, c'est des univers publics différents.
Oui, mais je trouve ça génial, je trouve ça formidable. C'est du monde. Alors, les amis, les enfants, d'abord, on suit à vélo, on suit des photos, c'est vraiment des choses, c'est hyper chouette de se faire remarquer sur un sujet qui est inattendu. C'était pas le but, parce qu'il faut Non, mais il y a de l'apprentissage, mais là on est en septembre, s'il faut décider, je ne sais pas en plus si c'est pas conformé, et commencer maintenant. Ok. Il ne faut pas commencer à mort, c'est pas possible. Ok. Et pour moi, c'est une préparation. En fait, c'est pas tant que notre équipe et tout, mais c'est d'aller ensemble. Et d'apprendre le boulot. Ok. Et puis, on fait quand même 1 ou 2 sentiments. Ok. Ouais, je vais sortir 80-90.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our attendees inside and online. My name is Nordine Kireche. I'm researcher at Sciences Po Paris, which is a leading institution in the field of social sciences and public affairs. I belong to the Sciences Po Urban School, and in which I manage an executive master called Stratégie et Finance de l'Immobilier. We also are about opening an academic chair which will make systematically the link between urban changes and real estate development. So answering the question, what makes a city great, is a big challenge. So I'm very pleased to abord the topic with two speakers coming from different backgrounds as users and promoters. Cécile de Guillebon, thank you for coming. Good afternoon. You joined Groupe Renault in 2013 as VP Real Estate. You are in charge of over 600 sites in 40 countries for a total of 13 million square meters of factories on different kind of real estate. So you will mainly share with us the user's point of view of the situation. And Séverine Chapus, nice to meet you. Welcome. You currently lead the mixed-use project development at BNP Paribas Real Estate, and your different experiences in private and public sectors has given you an overview of the urban fabric process. So thank you both for coming, for being with us today. Before starting, I would like to say a few words about the big cities and the challenges they are facing, especially in this very particular period. Indeed, the dynamics of metropolization have generated a lot of enthusiasm among many public and private stakeholders around the world. Some scholars, especially in the field of urban studies, have shown that the large metropolis as a place of all kinds of opportunities. They give access to the best job, best incomes, best universities, they give access to health, to amenities, to a trendy life with the best restaurants, shops, cultural activities, events, etc. However, some critics have emerged at the same time to denounce the effects of overconcentration of people and activities, imbalance in land use planning, pollution, lack of resources, especially water in some cities in the world, and they denounce housing crisis, the lack of affordable housing. The coronavirus pandemic has compounded some of the challenges that we were already facing. Just an example, I saw, just like you, I guess, a lot of articles in both French and UK press saying that the demand for big houses with garden and a place to work is growing faster than the demand for urban flats, which is very striking for according to the last decades of housing market. So, ladies, what's going on for real estate and the cities? And my main question is, are we entering to a new area in which countryside and work at a distance will replace the urban life? So other stakeholders of the city are questioned, including, of course, those of the real estate sector. So today I would like with you both do some perspective and imagine the demand in 5 or 10 years time, and ask you how to make a great city, which is more defined by a lot of stakeholders as a green city. So I would like to begin with you, Madame de Guillebon. Ask you a question about the need of offices. I know that you belong to different networks, associations, thinking about these topics. I know that you would like to share with us the results of a survey about this question. So, according to you, do you believe in a behavioral shift in of users of the demand of offices?
Yes, let's speak with data. I just conducted a survey among 35 large French groups. I called on my colleagues who shared with me, most of them on a very confidential basis, what's going on regarding distance working, what we call télétravail, and also dynamic work environment where you actually share desks, which can conduct to reducing the surface. It's not mechanic, it's not automatic, because you also have all the collaborative space. I will give more information later on, but let's stick with the figures. During COVID, a lot of people had to work 100%, 5 days a week, not everyone, but a very large majority. And for most of them, they discovered what it meant, what it was like not going to the office every day. Some of them travel a lot, but they never stay at home to work. So it was a first experience, and the result was really quite positive. At least in France, but not only in France, I'm sure. You cannot open a newspaper, a magazine, or put the radio on or television. Everybody is talking about the new way of working, staying at home part of the week, and everybody is wondering whether it's going to continue, or is it going to reduce? Is it a phenomenon just during COVID? So we really think among the corporate real estate managers that shared with me what's going on in their company, and that amounted to 550 work stations or employees, so quite a large sample actually. And we all think that after experiencing distance working, people will adopt this new way of working, and 50% of my colleagues think the average will be 2 days a week, which is a lot, because it's going more or less from zero, because even if the companies had agreements to go for distance working, not many people were doing it. So so it's not negotiated in most cases. It's a direction. People think that, you know, on average, a fair number of companies will accept that their employees stay at home on average 2 days a week to work. So 2 days doesn't mean 5. So it really means that, and the whole question is for the rest of the week, so 3 days, what are people going to expect? How are they going to organize their time? What type of services would they want to find when they come to the office? You know, they will expect to get a lot of the time they spend outside their home, because what they are able to do at home by themselves, with their computers, with all the you know, email systems, internet services and all that, they have experienced it, so it works well. There are really things that they work well, but it's not 100% of what they want to do. Everybody agrees that we need to meet our colleagues, we need to work together, everything around innovation, around new projects, about creativity. People have to get together. But we really have to reinvent the way that we host people in the companies, the way we organize the space. We have to fix large quantities and a large offer of collaborative space, because when people come back to the office, it's not to sit by themselves in front of their computer. That they can do at home by themselves. So it's a very, very big change for us, and we all think that we have to change our work environment, so we cannot just transform the way we use existing environment. We have to change it around and modify, the settings and the fittings. So it's a big change for us, and so the sample, 40% of them had experienced desk sharing before COVID, and that proportion doubles. 80% think they will go for that type of solution compared to 40% before COVID.
Thank you very much. Séverine Chapus, just a question before talking about talking as promoter, as manager, because I guess some people work under your direction. What do you think about this idea of 3 days at office, 2 days at home, as manager? Is it something you ask for?
Yes. So first, thank you very much, because having figures is really great, because we all have an intuition about how it will evolve, but to put figures is very important. So what we can observe, and also our conviction as our belief as a real estate developer, I think what Cécile said is extremely right. We experienced what we can do from home. So to go to the office, we have to offer something more, something else, something that makes supporting 2 hours transportation from home worth it, because we will find something else. And I think this something else is a kind of social experience, but it's also a learning experience. What can I learn when I go to the office? What kind of creativity, what kind of link I can create and make with others. So it's really, we've seen that already in retail. We had to work about the user experience, and I think we have to do exactly the same for the office. We have to work on the worker experience. Why can I find something more when I go to the office, whereas when I stay at home? And another point, I think, is also that probably that the more binary aspects, home on one side, office on the other, will move, and probably that we will see and learn to manage with a logic of network of offices, maybe a headquarter to find some kind of experience and some kind of meetings, but also a whole network of points that could be more corporate co-working, where people can go. It's not from home, so it's enable people to create a barrier between home and something, a place to work, but not too far away, and connect with other people also.
Thank you. Now I've got a question about the effects of these evolutions on the demand of square meters. I mean, what about, according to you, what can we expect in terms of amount of money of investments put in offices in the next years, and also on promoters' activities on that field?
I think our belief is really that we will still need offices, and there is a future for offices, but we have to reinvent it. I really strongly believe that. So it's not to say that we will banish the office and we will still have strong investment on that, but we have to rethink the spaces where we will work and not do the same, but offer something else. So, but I think the investors will still find an interest, strong interest, in developing these spaces where we will find a way to learn, work, spend time together.
Thank you. So in other words, you both believe in an evolution more than a revolution in terms of using offices and the need of that kind of real estate. Séverine Chapus, I've got another question So we talked about office. What about retail and logistics? Just maybe a few words about that class of assets. And I will add a question about residential, which is a very key point.
Actually, I think your question is really connected to offices. At least it's the way we see that, because what we've experienced also these past few months is that we need a city that can answer all our needs, and logistics is absolutely key. And we have to be able to have more mixed-used approach between working place, logistics, activity, and also social activity. So it's one of the commitments we took through our CEO, Thierry Laroupon, to promote some spaces for social activities, even within offices places, in order to have a more mixed-use approach and a diversity of public and usage. And we strongly believe that resiliency is linked to that kind of mixed-use approach. So logistics is part of that. We cannot say that logistics will just be problems and we will put them outside of the city, because we just need it for the proper way of working of the city.
Can you share with us just an example of mixed-use project you are currently developing?
Actually, we are working in the Greater Paris. Mm-hmm. So it's in not only the suburbs, but in middle-sized cities in the Greater Paris, where we try to mix residential aspects, so housing, offices, and also activity and logistics within a 1 hectare area.
Thank you. A question about mobility and its effects on the demand. Don't know, Madame de Guillebon, if you want to say a few words about that question, the balance between workplace and homes.
Yeah. Well, we strongly believe at Renault and among the community of the corporate real estate managers that getting together, being together is definitely something very important. Maybe not 5 days a week, and that's very important that we get organized, and it's a management issue, because if you don't tell your team, no, we get together on Mondays or on Tuesdays or whatever, once a month, whatever, there's no chance that people pick the same day. So it needs anticipation, it needs preparation, it's a whole change in the organization. You just not come in the office in the morning and just check whether people are arrived or not. You really have to anticipate and get organized. So it means that actually if people come less often to the office and expect a better experience at home, some people are likely, as you said earlier in the introduction, are likely to go further to live, because it could be less expensive. Maybe they have more space, they can enjoy, for some of them, a garden or outside space. So they will to travel a bit longer to the office, but less often. So if you come twice a week or 3 times a week, maybe it takes a little longer, and you take a train or you take several. You add up, depending on where you go, different ways of commuting. Maybe it could be your own car to the station, and then a subway or a train, and then at the end either bicycle or with digital app. Right now there are lots and lots of services that help people to get around, organize themselves, more and more people will not own their own equipment, for example, their car or their bicycle, but they will use a service, and companies like car manufacturers like Renault more and more get into service to provide transportation to people wherever they are. And let's say, for example, in cities, you enjoy electric cars, you like to have smaller cars, and maybe one day autonomous cars. But when you go on weekends or vacation with all your family, you want a bigger car. So more and more, you adapt your equipment, your vehicle, to the use, and there's a lot more car sharing as well, because we are more and more into the economy of sharing equipment and all that. So this digital app will transform the way we move around, get organized, and find the best way to go from one point to another point in the best manner. Some wanted to do it at the lowest cost, but some people want to do it in the most comfortable environment. It really depends on each person. It's a very personalized approach.
Thank you. Do you want to add something about the question of transportation and its effects on the demand of housing?
Maybe just one point. I think maybe another way to see it is to, from an urban point of view, is to say that if we think and conceive some really mixed-use neighborhoods, then you can also avoid some unnecessary transportation. And it's the whole concept really developed by someone like Carlo Moreno about the 15 minutes walk city. It's to be able to have retail, to have housing, to have places where you can have a Wi-Fi connection and secured place to work. So that kind of mixed city, a school and public equipment, to really have that kind of approach of the city in order not to be forced to go at the other side of the city, but to choose to do so if you want to, but not to be to have that as a constraint in your daily life.
Okay, so to sum up, ladies, you don't believe in a new feature, a new geography of production and evolution, but not a revolution. So all the articles or analysis we're hearing at the moment, you think that it's a short-term analysis more than something structural for the future?
I think that
it's just hypothesis. It's just a kind of.
So humility is really the rule, because it's extremely complicated, and maybe that 1 or 2 days away from the office will enable people to live further, as we've just said. So maybe cities at 1 hour from Metropole could benefit from that. I don't know, but I think that we will still have the same issue to be able to enable people to have affordable housing within the city and to be able to work there. So I'm not completely convinced at that stage that it will be a revolution in the way we manage at the global scale.
An attendee online asked me if the solution would be to leave the big cities and build new cities, which is on the Ratti. We know that model in France, so I guess you don't agree with that kind of solutions, of course.
It's not that I disagree, but I think that we have to deal with, in a general manner, with existing resources, existing cities, and value what we have and make the best out of it. So we have great cities already, and we have to deal with our own resources and to regenerate and to refurbish what we have in order to maintain that and not go further to build new town, I think.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you want to add something? Sorry.
I confirm that we experience an acceleration of already existing trends during COVID. It's not as if we had discovered all brand new phenomenon or things. It's just things that already existed, and it suddenly appeared in very clear manner that it was profound trends, and to some extent we would not go back to a number of things. So it's not a revolution, it's more an acceleration and very, very strong evolution. And we feel that we have saved 5 years at least in these trends of existing phenomenon. It's going much faster, but the things were already there.
Thank you. So an acceleration more than a revolution. Second part of our discussion, I would like to ask you now how to build a great city. As I told you in my introduction, the demand for a great city is more and more a demand for a green city. Séverine, Chapus, I would like to ask you a question about, firstly, how can real estate industry, especially promoters, but not only, can contribute in developing a green urbanism, and with what kind of tools, of ideas, of new way of practicing?
So first of all, as Cécile said, we've been working on that for many years, and I think the challenge is always higher, and it's good because it pushes us to do better. But it's already the way we work in order to reduce the environmental footprint of our project. And to do so, we try to think at each phase of the development project. So when we conceive a project, as I said, we really tried to value the existing resources, be it natural resources or just the existing buildings, everything, the energy, the networks, so everything we can build on is really a key point, because even if you're very virtuous in terms of material you choose, but you go find wood that is very, very far away and you bring it, then your global carbon approach will not be good. So we try to have a global approach and to value the local. Then I think another part of it is to anticipate the kind of uses of the place you develop. And as I said, I'm repeating myself, but I really believe that when you think mixed-used, then it's also a way to be green, because you will maybe avoid some unnecessary transportation, also from people, but also to bring some consumer goods in the place. And last, I think the last stage is to go a bit further and to anticipate the next uses, in a way, the life cycle of what you build, and to think about modularity, reversibility, in order to say maybe today it's used as an office, but we're talking about that kind of evolution. So tomorrow it could be something else, closer from housing approach. So we have to ease that kind of transformation.
Okay, thank you. Just a few words about, you talked about wood. What is the proportion of your product using wood right now, and what are your expectations?
What I can tell you is that our teams are today developing one of the largest wood campus in the Greater Paris, yeah. Exactly, Arboretum. So it's a huge reference. It's a huge learning curve also for all the teams, and I think we can be proud of doing that. And
can you say a few words about that project, because it's very emblematic of mixed-use project using woods,
exactly,
Greater Paris.
And once again, it's really our teams, and Thierry Laroupon, our CEO, and Thomas Charvet leading the office team, developing that in partnership with Woodéum. And so it will be one of the greatest limited environmental footprints for such a large campus.
and offering also the kind of landscape, natural landscape that we can expect when we are working, because it will be green trees and nature all around, so it's not only the material, but it's the context that matters.
Thank you. You want to add something?
No, I agree that there's a great expectation for chlorophyll, and people they like to go outside and to breathe the fresh air, and you know, each time you can have a canteen with you know, tables outside. It works really well. You know, it brings a really nice atmosphere within the company to have terraces and balconies and outside space.
Thank you. I've got a last question for you both about the new social demand. I mean, one can see the rise of social movements, protestation, demonstrations, especially youngsters fighting against global warming. So they've got a new approach of the city, new approach of transportation, new approach of working, living, etc., etc. I can also talk about associations and the way they ask for more efforts to both private and public stakeholders. And I would like also to say a few words about the green wave of new city councillors we saw in most of the French big cities. It appears that we are living a kind of turning point in terms of social movement, urban movement, and it could have a lot of consequences in terms of urban fabric and the way public actors or people from associations ask for a new projects, a new way of making cities, so new ways of making real estate. So I would like to know how do you feel regarding these transformations as promoters? For example, Séverine, do you expect a new area of relationship between private and public stakeholders?
The question is very large and very complex. I will react on the first point you mentioned, which is social movements. I think, and especially during these last few months, we've seen some just unbearable inequalities. And we are talking a lot about urban resiliency and so on. I think that the first factor of resiliency is social cohesion. So as real estate developers, but as an urban actor, our responsibility is to be part of that kind of social cohesion. So we are talking about housing. I think in a way housing, we are back to basics. What you just said about the need of just breathing fresh air, quality of light, quality of housing, it's just the basis, and everyone should be allowed to have that. So it's also our responsibility to think about quality and affordable housing also. So that's the way we can still be discussing with cities, because we have to find the right balance between acceptable density and maintaining, avoiding sealing the ground and so on, but also keeping that kind of role of developing to offer quality spaces for everyone and affordable spaces for everyone.
So there is a kind of contradiction or in that injunction. So you have to make more better, but at good price. So something, I guess, very not easy to.
Yes, but I think there are some way to work on that, and it's the whole value chain that has to work together and to think together. We have some tools in order to who owns the land, who owns the building, who pays for what, and we have a whole range of solutions to think that together.
Thank you. Yeah.
There are three things I would like to say. The first one is that there is a great diversity We just spoke about inequalities. During COVID, some people experience a very nice environment to work from home, but some people found it extremely hard in small apartments with young kids and have to cheat them because they couldn't go to school. So lots and lots of different experiences. People being alone as well felt it was really hard to face this situation day after day after day, being alone. So there are different situations and just not one answer or one preference, one position. And what we have to take into account is that the fact that we have to adapt and know and take into account all these different behaviors and situations and feelings. So this is the first thing I would like to say. The second is that among the employees of large companies, there are a number of people who just don't have the choice. When you sell in you're a cashier in a store, or when you work in a warehouse where you push trailers and this, and when you go to a factory and when you make manufacturers and production tasks, you just don't have the choice to go or not to go to the office. So we should not forget that for many people, and of course in hospitals, in public sectors, people doesn't change anything. They have to go to work every day. So this is the second thing I would like to say. And then the third thing I would also like to recall and to remind, that during this COVID experience and period, a lot of things that we thought were just due to us, were just normal, and we would not even think about it, became something vital. Getting, for example, a delivery. We would expect a very important delivery, and having somebody taking the risk to drive a truck and bringing, the package and all this, and for example, all the stores being open in the morning, closing at night, with all the risks, sanitary risks that all the employees would face to be able to provide the service. All of the sudden, or all the people, for example, cleaning the buildings, cleaning the areas, collecting the garbage, all these small tasks we didn't even look at in a normal situation, all of a sudden we realized they were vital to all of us. So I would like that we don't forget that during this period, all these people, we are very keen on thanking them and applaud, for example, all the people in the hospitals, but we should not forget that they were the key people in the society.
Thank you very much for your kind words about the key workers. We've got only a few seconds to conclude. I just have a very simple question for you, as stakeholder, as women, as citizens. According to you, what makes a city great? Just in a couple of words. What makes a city great?
For me, it's public space. It's gardens, it's museums, or it's even churches, it's the monuments, it's everything where you can go with freedom.
Thank you. Cécile?
Séverine.
Pardon, Séverine.
Maybe I would answer by a question. I would say, for whom? Great for whom? For young people, for elderly people, for women, for people with low income, with high income. If everybody's answers, yes, it's a great city, then it would be a great city.
Thank you. Thank you very much, both of you. We've got a few seconds for questions. Yes. No questions? Sorry? No question online? So thank you very much once again. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this last session. It is my role now to conclude the day. Of course, say thank you to everyone that have joined us today. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for coming. Thank you for all the teams for this very exceptional day. It was funny because in what you discussed, a lot of the notes I took during the day were brought up. I took down a few things. Here, among the things you said, and things I heard today, is that what I hear is collective mindset, meaning that decisions that are not going to be taken in the future cannot just be taken on our own. It's just not individuals here and there that are able to decide. I think we need to go back to private and public, I would say, gathering as we did today, actually. We had public and private actors today, and I think that we need very much this collaboration. What else did I take down? For instance, in the private sector, something, I think it was you, Séverine, who mentioned the reuse. The reuse, today we have an announcement that a reuse booster of approximately 30 actors have, I would say, engaged into, well, reusing construction materials. So that was also a very important and very interesting moment. Among other things, I think also reconciliation between city and the environment. I think that was mentioned also earlier on and throughout the day. Anne Hidalgo, Mayor of Paris, said earlier this morning that the ones that have already changed their business model are already ahead. And I think you've also discussed that earlier on. She also announced, which was also one of the announcements of the day, a citizen-centric, I would say, approach to the urbanization laws on a bioclimatic point of view. So she wants to understand point of view of the citizens and how they can, again, collectively engage into, I would say, putting the city back to the heart of the debate. And one word also is ambition. It was Nicolas Sarkozy this very morning that said, we need to have greater projects. I think you talked about Greater Paris as well. He said we should also be discussing Greater Lyon, Greater Marseille. It's by, I would say, raising the level of expectation, raising the level of projects that we will overcome this crisis. And we need to, going back to having important and ambitious projects. So that was my notes of the day, and a lot of things you actually discussed earlier on. So thank you for that. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. It was a very long, interesting day, private, public sector. Of course, you may still network on the ground floor right after this, so the day does not end, and you have also some live streaming regarding tomorrow events that are closed door events on hospitality and gender. Did we have a slide we wanted to show? Here it is. Okay. So, of course, it's also my pleasure to be launching the MIPIM 2021, I would say, what is the word I'm looking for? 2021 model. We have decided to do a regeneration act together, people, planet, performance. So, of course, I will be delighted to have you all in MIPIM in 2021, and I hope it's a date. Thank you very much, and that's it for today. Thank you very much to all.